disability, which makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org.
Hello, this is Bruce, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from current issues of the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. From Saturday and Sunday, March 21st and 22nd of 2026, one of the top stories, deal taking shape for South End projects. Mayor says mediation could clear path for Centennial Park and data center. Article by Rick Pfeiffer. Mayor Robert Restaino said Friday that he believes the city has reached the broad outline of a deal that would allow two major development projects to move forward. The mayor said it appears that court-ordered mediation will resolve a snarl of lawsuits between the city and Niagara Falls Redevelopment and some of its affiliated companies. The result of the resolution of those legal proceedings would allow the proposed Centennial Park project and a massive data center development to move forward. The big issues are worked out, Restaino said, but there are still a lot of details to finalize. We need to make sure the stipulations we've made are clear into the future. A spokesman for NFR could not immediately be reached for comment on the apparent settlement agreement. Restaino credited the efforts of New York State Supreme Court Justice Deborah Chimes and her staff for achieving a settlement. Justice Chimes will check in regularly with counsel for the city and NFR, Restaino said. Justice Chimes and her staff have been great at keeping people on point and on purpose. Sources with knowledge of the settlement talks have said that lawyers for the city and NFR have been meeting on a bi-weekly basis for several months in an effort to find what has become known as a two-project solution to the Centennial Park and data center conflicts. That solution would presumably allow both projects to be built. The settlement would also resolve an ongoing eminent domain action by the city against NFR. The city currently has a petition pending before New York State Supreme Court Justice Frank Sedita that would force Blue Apple Properties, a subsidiary of NFR, to turn over the deed to roughly 4.7 acres of South End property to be used for Centennial Park. The Falls was awarded the property as part of a lengthy eminent domain proceeding against Blue Apple and NFR. The petition indicates the city is offering Blue Apple $4.029 million for the property, which is described as the highest amount of any appraisal obtained by the city. The Gazette has previously reported that the city's purchase offer is more than $2.5 million, higher than the $1.436 million the company paid for the land roughly 20 years ago. Blue Apple has reportedly rejected that offer. The property that is subject to the eminent domain proceedings is bounded by Falls Street, 8th Street, 10th Street, and the former 10th Street Park. It represents just under half of the 10 to 12 acres of South End land that the city originally sought through eminent domain. The matter had been scheduled for a hearing before Sedita in October. That hearing was postponed and has not been rescheduled. The remaining more than 5 acres of NFR land being sought for the park project is being contested in a separate quiet title court action. The city claims that the land that was once the former 10th Street Park was never legally transferred to NFR's ownership as part of a deal in 2003-2004 between NFR and former Falls mayors Irene Elia and Vince Anello. The city has asserted that NFR never completed the process of taking control of the parkland by gaining approval of the property transfer from the New York State Legislature. The quiet title claim is being heard by Chime. Also a part of the settlement is an effort by NFR to recover attorneys' fees as part of a now disposed Freedom of Information Law, FOIL, suit against the city. The request for attorney's fees was denied by State Supreme Court Justice Frank Caruso after he ruled that the city had met its obligations under FOIL. NFR has filed a notice to appeal Caruso's ruling to the New York State Supreme Court Appellate Division, 4th Department. That appeal is pending. The settlement agreement would also reportedly resolve a recently filed lawsuit from NFR against the Niagara Falls Planning Board that contests the board's decision to deny a request by the South End landowner for a recommendation to the Falls City Council for a proposed text amendment to the city's high-energy use law. The proposed amendment would have significantly modified the city's zoning code restrictions on high-energy use industries like Bitcoin mines and data centers by eliminating a ban on those uses outside of industrial zones, increasing the permitted noise levels from high-energy facilities, and giving the City Council the ability to approve and grant waivers to the setback and buffer requirements in the law. NFR attorneys complained that planning board members were given multiple options for considering the request rather than just a simple yes or no vote. The Centennial Park plans call for the construction of a multifaceted, year-round event campus that would include a 6,000 to 7,000 seat arena for sporting and entertainment events, a smaller arena for sporting and entertainment events, and a splash pad that could be converted into an ice skating rink during winter months. The project also calls for the construction of a parking ramp with exterior walls that could be used for rock climbing, and a roof that could be used as a location for concerts or movie screenings. The park would be constructed on 12 acres of South End property, described as 907 Fall Street, and an adjacent portion of property along John Daly Memorial Parkway. The estimated cost of the project is $200 million. NFR's latest application, seeking to establish a negotiated planned development district, also known as a planned unit district, for the purpose of building a proposed $1.5 billion data center campus in the South End, is no longer pending. The application expired after NFR failed to respond to a December Planning Board determination that the submission was incomplete. The original proposed PUD called for rezoning a swath of roughly 53 acres of prime South End Tourist District land to allow for the construction of the data center at Niagara Digital Campus Project. The more than 500-page submission laid out NFR's agreement for changing the South End zoning map to permit industrial uses in an area currently zoned for residential, commercial, and other non-industrial uses. The creation of the PUD on that land, which is not all currently owned by NFR, would allow for what the South End landowners' attorneys call a blending of different zoning designations within the unit. NFR has said its proposed digital campus would be developed in 5 phases. It would include 8 two-story buildings and a one-story building for a total of 1,232,715 square feet of space. The PUD would be bounded by John B. Daly Boulevard, Falls Street, 15th Street, and Buffalo Avenue. The proposed location of the first stage of the PUD is the same 12 to 15 acres of land that the city has proposed to use for its Centennial Park project. Finding his place. Falls entrepreneur helps put the Falls, Niagara County, on the map. Article by Mark Shearer. Silvio Martelli has fond memories of visiting other parts of the country while vacationing with his family. One of his favorite parts, exploring discovery maps from places they visited. The colorful hand-drawn traveling guides produced for top tourism destinations across North America highlight points of interest for travelers, including spots where they can shop, eat, and stay. Martelli liked them so much as a young man that he bought into the company as an adult. In May, the franchise owner for the Niagara Falls, New York Discovery Map expects to hit quite a milestone: 2 million maps distributed across Niagara County. Going on family vacations, we would always seek the Discovery Map out when I was growing up, Martelli said. They just had everything on them: where to eat, things to do, services and coupons and information that we'd utilize every year. So I was aware of them, and as I was trying to help local businesses, it just kind of came together. Martelli, 39, comes from a family of hardworking Niagara Falls business owners. His great-grandfather, Edmund, operated a beer distribution business in the Falls for years. His great-grandfather and grandfather, who was also named Sylvia, also owned and operated Lum's Restaurant, formerly located at the corner of First and Niagara Streets downtown. The popular spot later became Silvio's, a restaurant known for its Italian cuisine. Martelli grew up on the Falls and graduated in 2008 from the University at Buffalo with a degree in media studies, with a minor concentration in video production. He has always enjoyed creating videos and thought his career path might involve production work or maybe marketing. I was just always into video cameras, he said. I was just always picking up my mom's camera at the holidays. Everyone had the camcorder out back then, and I was always the one filming. This is his 9th year of being in the business of promoting little businesses as the Falls-based franchisee for Discovery Maps. Based in Waitsfield, Vermont, the Mapping Destination Company produces illustrated paper maps designed to encourage people to get off the beaten path as they travel. Martelli signed his first contract with Discovery Map in 2016, a time when he felt a niche existed for promoting what businesses, restaurants, and attractions in the Falls had to offer. When I was going to college, I would deliver food on the side for a local pizzeria in the city, and I'd go to the hotels delivering and to some other places, and you'd overhear visitors asking the basic stuff like, "Where should I go?" Martelli said. A lot of times the staff just seemed uninformed. They'd say, like Canada or the casino. I just knew there were so many more options out there that they'd forget. Not everyone has a list on the top of their head on where to go. I knew there was a way to help create awareness and support our local businesses around here, and I kind of found Discovery Map to be the best solution, he added. Martelli will soon be distributing his 10th edition of the Niagara Falls Map. Over the years, he has worked with the company to give the Falls Map a real local flavor, insisting on small additions like drawings of seagulls flying above the upper Niagara River and an image of the Maid of the Mist boat passing a rainbow near the American Falls. Each edition features local points of interest, including the Old Stone Chimney, DeCamillo's Bakery, and the Niagara Arts and Cultural Center. The map also features things to see and do in Lewiston, Youngstown, and the town of Niagara. The opposite side of the two-sided map offers visitors a look at interesting sites in Lockport, with a smaller map at that bottom focusing specifically on downtown Niagara Falls. I started this from the ground up, so I had a lot to do with saying draw this and put this here and this should be there, Martelli said. A lot of, I guess, Easter eggs, or whatever you call them, are on there, like a tightrope walker, seagulls, a barrel going over the falls. It's just stuff the company wouldn't be aware of. They wouldn't know. More than 200,000 maps are distributed at more than 200 locations across Niagara County each year. Martelli boasts an 85% customer renewal rate. He thinks part of the reason has to do with the cartoonish design, which he believes appeals to a younger audience. Children traveling with their parents or maybe grandparents. The artwork is catchy, he said. It catches your eye. I think sometimes kids have something to do with it. They spot it, they think it is cool, show their parents, and then their parents can be like, "Oh, this is great," and they can utilize it. While a traditional map may sound dated in a rapidly evolving digital age of cell phones and AI, Martelli said His numbers suggest a lot of people, especially those traveling in places they don't know well, still prefer getting around the old-fashioned way. A lot of people just think they can rely on social media posts, but it only hits a certain demographic, especially for tourists, he said. I don't know how many people are finding a local business's Facebook post. It takes research that people aren't really doing when they are on vacation. As he prepares to hit a 2 million map milestone, he describes as mind-blowing, Martelli said he hopes locals and visitors who pick up his map will find, despite their shortcomings, Niagara Falls and the rest of Niagara County have a ton of good to offer, especially for vacationing families. A lot of people badmouth the city, he said. I'm always defending it. If I hear someone just putting the city down, I'll speak up and just tell them they are focusing on the negative side of things, and they might be unaware of what kind of a gem it really is and what's really out there. To learn more about the Discovery Map system, visit www.discoverymap.com. If you are interested in having your business or attraction listed on the Niagara Falls Discovery Map, contact Martelli at 716-537-MAPS or send an email to silviom@discoverymap.com. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. NCAA Tournament giving a boost to Niagara Falls tourism. Teams, fans fill hotel and restaurants during off-season stretch. Article by Rick Pfeiffer. On Thursday afternoon, a pair of Niagara Falls Police Traffic Division's SUVs sped down the I-190 towards Buffalo, bookending a 3-bus caravan. On board the buses were the players of the Howard University basketball team, their coaches and staff. They were headed to their first-round NCAA National College Basketball Tournament game at the KeyBank Center in Buffalo. The team had spent the previous night in the Falls at the Doubletree Fallsview Resort. Destination Niagara USA President and CEO John Percy said it's just another example of how regional sporting events can give an off-tourist season boost to the Falls. Anytime there's a regional sporting event, it will have an impact on Falls tourism, Percy said. We see it with the Bills games as well. When the opponent is near enough to travel, like Pittsburgh and New England. And it wasn't just folks from Washington, D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, where Howard is located, who made their way to here. Percy was returning from a trip on Wednesday and wanting for a connecting flight at the Detroit airport when he saw a swarm of people in the maize and blue of the University of Michigan Wolverines making their way toward his plane. I said, "Are you going to Buffalo for the NCAA?" Percy said, and they all cheered. All the teams and fans traveling to the NCAA tournament need lodging and food. Percy says as hotels and restaurants get filled up close to the event venue, fans will migrate to nearby communities like the Falls. The room rates for the nearby hotels go up, and they fill up, and that leads to a compression of availability, Percy said. Anytime you have that, you're going to have a positive impact here. Mayor Robert Restaino agreed with off-season room rates in place in the Falls. The city becomes an attractive place for basketball fans to stay. The rates may be better for folks here, the mayor said, and with 8 teams playing here, that's a lot of people. He also said the fans can check off a trip to a major tourist destination. So those who choose the Falls as a place to stay can also see the Falls while they're here, Restaino said. You get a better room rate and see the Falls. The mayor said some local restaurateurs have told him they expect tournament fans to impact their bottom line. Percy said he's waiting to see the full value of the tournament. I won't know the full impact of the tournament until I see the hotel occupancy reports next week, the tourism chief said. We are paying more attention to these sporting events. Fans are loyal and people hop on planes to follow their teams. It is having an effect on destinations. Jason Krempke named NCIDA Board Chairman. Taking over for retiring Mark Onesi, has served on board for past 6 years. Article by Robert Creenan. The Niagara County Industrial Development Agency's Board of Directors has a new leader. IDA Board Vice Chairman Jason Krempke was named the new board chairman at Wednesday's meeting, with former chair Mark Onesi announcing his retirement following 16 years on the board. Mark Berube, who had served as assistant secretary, was named the vice chairman in Krempke's place. Since I've been involved with the IDA board, there's been a lot of positive traction from a development standpoint in the county, Krempke said. I'm excited to take the next step. Having been on the IDA board since February of 2020, Krempke also works as Five Star Bank's Buffalo Regional President. Prior to the new role, he has been the vice chair for the past 2 years and has been the chairman of several board committees. A retired lieutenant colonel from the U.S. Army, Onesi had served as board chairman since March 2020. He said he was retiring for personal reasons, and the board needed new people on it, confident in Krempke's background. It's hard to give it up, but it's time, Onesi said on Wednesday's meeting. Working with professionals who are interested in making this county better is the reason I came. It's the reason I stayed. As the IDA Board of Directors is involved with approving tax incentive packages for prospective developments, Onesi's time as chairman has seen the board receive criticism for some of those deals. Those have included nearly $124 million towards the $550 million Amazon Fulfillment Center, due to open later this year, 8 incentive deals for fast food chain franchisee Muhammad Shoaib, who has been accused of wage theft, and most recently $12.5 million toward the $276.6 million Somerset Solar Project, though Onesi was one of the board members who voted with prejudice as he disagreed with the project. Krempke sees himself initially following the same course as Onesi, stating he has done a nice job as a board chairman. We have excellent leadership in the agency itself, Krempke said. I'm there to help and provide direction. The Niagara County Legislature has to make an appointment to fill Onesi's open seat. SUNY Niagara expanding child care spaces. 11 SUNY campuses receiving funds for expanding services. Article by Robert Creenan. SUNY Niagara is one of 11 community colleges that will receive expanded child care services for student parents, Governor Kathy Hochul's office recently announced. The state is providing additional funding to colleges to accommodate students in high-demand programs, such as courses that are part of the SUNY Reconnect initiative. Student parents should be able to focus on their studies without having to worry about finding safe and affordable child care, said SUNY Chancellor John B. King, Jr. The expansion of the child care programs across SUNY's community colleges will work to remove barriers so all of our students can receive the support they need to pursue the education of their dreams. SUNY Niagara will create additional spots for students to bring their infants and toddlers. Its Oshai Child Development Center takes in kind of students and faculty between 8 weeks and 12 years old. Christine Duquin, the center's director, said they hope to create 10 additional spots for families with those funds, though she did not confirm how much the college is receiving. They are currently taking in 47 kids this semester. We appreciate the state's investment and commitment to strengthening child care services, Duquin said. This funding will enable us to provide high-quality, safe, nurturing care while supporting the developmental needs of children and families we serve in the community. The other 5 community colleges creating spots for children are Jamestown Community College, Nassau Community College, Rockland Community College, Tompkins Cortland Community College, SUNY Westchester Community College. 5 other community colleges will expand their child care services in partnership with local child care providers to include nights and weekends. They are SUNY Broome Community College, Dutchess Community College, Finger Lakes Community College, Monroe Community College, Onondaga Community College. The SUNY Reconnect initiative provides free tuition, fees, and supplies for adults between the ages of 25 and 55 without a college degree looking to pursue an associate's degree in a high-demand field. SUNY Niagara was also one of the 12 campuses that benefited from $1.72 million in state funding in 2023 towards creating 200 more spots for child care centers. Surveying history. Joseph Ellicott comes alive. Grand Island actor to portray surveyor at Van Horn Mansion event in Newfane. Article by Heidi Trushell Light. Joseph Ellicott, the man who helped lay out the streets of Washington, D.C. and position the Erie Canal, will reflect on his life in the 1800s in a free event Tuesday at the Van Horn Museum in Burt. The presentation, organized by the Town of Newfane Historical Society, will highlight Ellicott's significant role in forming Niagara County in western New York. Grand Island actor Dennis Upton, who has portrayed the surveyor Ellicott 50 times, said that around 1800, all of western New York was established as Ontario County. Ellicott, who prepared parcels of western New York's land for sale by the Holland Land Company, later sectioned off Genesee County. Eventually, he divided the 2 mega counties again to make the current 8 counties of the region. Upton said he portrays Ellicott at the end of his career, when he was anxious to share his life story. It's a very powerful emotional presentation, he said. In 1824, Ellicott was having some mental issues and was sent down the canal to an institution. I portray Ellicott as somebody who was probably on the spectrum, was incredibly gifted, with a high ability to organize but lacking social skills. He never married. He was very direct. Stephen Goodman, a trustee for the Town of Newfane Historical Society, said he saw Upton's presentation at the Oakfield Historical Society. He looks authentic, Goodman said. He has the garb on from the early 1800s and is very knowledgeable. He brings several pieces of equipment to show how surveying was done. He had a discussion about how western New York looked, including the wildness of it. Goodman said Ellicott is particularly significant to Newfane and Olcott. We have one of the best markers from the Holland Land Company of anywhere in the country, he said. Transit Road was a major north-south surveying line for the region, Upton said, running from Lake Ontario to the Pennsylvania line. Upton said a boulder was carved with location measures and left in Olcott as an important marker, with the same done on the state line. Patrick Wiesand, a former director of the Holland Land Office Museum in Batavia, said Ellicott's great survey of western New York, which was finished in 1800, reflected the political and commercial realities of the times. Ellicott had a hard life as a surveyor, and he lived in the woods for 6 to 8 months of the year, Wiesland said. He was ready to come out of the woods. The Holland Land Company was looking for a land agent, so Ellicott accepted the less physical role, he said. The company originally thought it would sell the land to major developers, but prices suddenly fell. They decided they would sell the land to poor, landless farmers from New England. Normally, the oldest son would inherit the family farm, Wiesand said, while the next son would inherit a sum of money, and those younger farmers would come to purchase land in New York. Originally, Ellicott had surveyed 640-acre parcels, he said, but later reduced the size to 120 acres, which was easier for farmers to produce down payments. When the Holland Land Company was originally buying the land, they thought the major population center of western New York would be in Bath, because there are tributaries and waterways in multiple directions, Wiesand said. In the early 1810s, The larger population centers were Utica, Canandaigua, and Batavia, Weeson said. Syracuse wasn't even thought of yet. Buffalo had some mills. It all changed because of the War of 1812, and they knew they had to go west, and the easiest way was to build a canal. The easiest way to have done it, which was one of the proposals, was to build a canal from Black Rock to Youngstown to load things on lake boats. Ellicott had been named Canal Commissioner, overseeing the project. The reason Lake Ontario wasn't utilized, Weeson said, was because of the concern of the British sinking ships on the lake. Instead of taking the canal through those larger towns to the south, it was situated north of the Niagara Escarpment. I think the biggest reason why is that Ellicott owned land in what would become Albion, Medina, and Lockport, Weeson said. Coincidence? Probably not. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Chuck Norris, martial arts master and actor, dies at 86. Article by Jonathan Matisse, Associated Press. Chuck Norris, the martial arts grandmaster and action star whose roles in Walker, Texas Ranger, and other television shows and movies made him an iconic tough guy, sparking internet parodies and adoration from presidents, has died at 86. Norris died Thursday in what his family described as a sudden passing. While we would like to keep the circumstances private, please know that he was surrounded by his family and was at peace, the family said in a statement posted to social media. Before he would become a star in movies and on TV, Norris was wildly successful in competitive martial arts. He became a 6-time undefeated world professional middleweight karate champion. He also founded his own Korean-based American hard style of karate, known sometimes as Chun Kook Do, and the United Fighting Arts Federation, which has awarded more than 3,300 Chuck Norris System black belts worldwide. Black Belt magazine ultimately credited Norris in its Hall of Fame with holding a 10th degree black belt, the highest possible honor. Born Carlos Ray Norris in Ryan, Oklahoma, on March 10, 1940, he grew up poor. At age 12, he moved with his family to Torrance, California, and joined the U.S. Air Force after high school in 1958. It was during a deployment to Korea that he started training in martial arts, including judo and Tang Soo Do. I went out for gymnastics and football at North Torrance High, he told the Associated Press in 1982. I played some football, but I also spent a lot of time on the bench. I was never really athletic until I was in the service in Korea. After he was honorably discharged in 1962, he worked as a file clerk for Northrop Aircraft and applied to be a police officer, but was put on a waiting list. Meanwhile, he opened a martial arts studio, which expanded to a chain with students including such stars as Bob Barker, Priscilla Presley, Donnie and Marie Osmond, and Steve McQueen, whom he later credited with encouraging him to get into acting. Norris made his film debut as an uncredited bodyguard in the 1968 movie The Wrecking Crew, which included a fight with Dean Martin. He had also crossed paths with Bruce Lee in martial arts circles. Their friendship, sometimes as sparring partners, led to an iconic face-off in the 1972 movie Return of the Dragon, in which Lee fights and kills Norris's character in Rome's Colosseum. He went on to act in more than 20 movies, such as Missing in Action, The Delta Force, and Sidekicks. I wanted to project a certain image on the screen of a hero. I had seen a lot of anti-hero movies in which the lead was neither good nor bad. There was no one to root for, Norris said in 1982. In 1993, he took on his most famed role as a crime-fighting lawman in TV's Walker, Texas Ranger. The show ran for 9 seasons, and in 2010, then-Governor Rick Perry awarded him the title of Honorary Texas Ranger. The Texas Senate later named him an honorary Texan. It's not violence for violence sake with no moral structure, Norris told the AP in 1996, speaking about the show. You try to portray the proper meaning of what it's about, fighting injustice with justice, good versus bad. It's entertaining for the whole family. Built for the madness. Beeline took Canisius to the MAC pinnacle 30 years ago, starting his run of March Magic. Article by Nick Sabato. As John Beeline compiled a Hall of Fame resume over his 40-year coaching career at a variety of levels, March became the month he thrived. In a tournament setting of 2 games in 3 days, Beeline was hard to beat. If his teams lost, it was rarely because he was outcoached over a 40-minute game. He didn't do it through sideline theatrics, catchphrases, or fire and brimstone pregame speeches. Beeline became known as college basketball's gentleman. It didn't take long for him to ditch the sport coat he always wore onto the court, but it was draped half carefully over his chair during the game and folded neatly over his arm at game's end. But there was a time in Beeline's career when March was haunting. Heading into the 1996 MAC tournament, he was just John, or at least that's how his top assistant at Canisius, Mike McDonald, phrased it. Burt, Newfane, Lockport, Niagara County, or any of the other places that eventually planted their flag next to his name had yet to claim him en masse. 2 years earlier, Canisius won the MAC regular season championship, only to be stunned in the tournament semifinals. The Golden Griffins were second in 1995, but again lost in the semifinals. They went to the NIT both seasons, including a run to the semifinals in 1995, but the NCAA tournament eluded them. When the 1996 tournament started, another early end seemed imminent, and then fifth-seeded Canisius went on a run. 3 wins, all be fewer than 7 points, end with Beeline cutting down the nets in Albany's Knickerbocker Arena to clinch his first NCAA tournament berth. Beeline went 12 more times with 3 other schools over his career, with 3 Sweet 16s, 2 Elite Eights, and a pair of national championship games. But 1996 was the first, the one that started it all. That's like saying your first child holds a different place, Beeline told GNN Sports during a phone interview. I think it was just getting over that hump at Canisius. We had so many loyal fans, but flamed out in the tournament, or just weren't in contention for championships. Now, we finally had a championship. The 1996 tournament started with a dejected Beeline needing a prep talk from assistant coach Phil Seymour, although Beeline had good reason to be in a dour mood. Canisius was 15-6 and 6-3 in the MAC, riding a 5-game winning streak when it headed to Loyola, Maryland for a February 10th game. That's when star forward Darryl Barley injured his knee grabbing a rebound. Barley, now a successful coach for Rochester's East High School, was the MAC Player of the Year. Suddenly 19.5 points and 7.6 rebounds were ripped from Canisius's lineup. The Golden Griffins lost 4 of their last 5 games to close the regular season. After returning in the regular season finale, Barley broke his thumb in practice and was out for the conference tournament. Seymour told Beeline to buck up. The players would know if their coach didn't think they could win, and it would get ugly. It was also a wide-open field after Iona and Fairfield split the regular season title. Plus, Canisius still had Michael Meeks, a 6'10" forward who eventually led Canada in scoring during the 2000 Olympics. And while Beeline wasn't a national name yet, the MAC knew how good he was, running an offense, 2-guard, that was ahead of its time by using sharp-shooting centers and forwards. He could take his and beat yours. He could take yours and beat his. He was that good, said Jack Armstrong, whose Niagara team swept Canisius in 95-96. That kind of defined how I felt about John. You parachute him in anywhere, he'll figure out a team within a few weeks and have them play a smart, fundamentally sound, cohesive style that makes the team effective and successful. Loyola was the Canisius's quarterfinal matchup, an opponent it beat in overtime with Barley and lost by 1 without him. In the loss, senior Mickey Frazier called a timeout Canisius didn't have late in the game, and the Golden Griffins fell 64-63. In the third meeting, Frazier scored a team-high 15 points, while freshman Keith Lampkin scored 11 points in 17 minutes off the bench in a 74-67 win. Canisius drew top-seeded Iona in the semifinals, a team it split with during the regular season, including a 22-point win in February. Trailing by 8 with 12:07 remaining, Canisius went on a 10-2 run over the next 5 minutes, taking the lead on consecutive three-pointers by Frazier and Kevin Thompson to win 63-62, finally advancing to the championship game. And although Beeline's teams were known for crisp offense, Canisius beat number 3 Fairfield in a defensive struggle. The Stags shot just 30% from the field, while Frazier, who averaged 9.7 points per game, scored 8 points in 2 minutes to take the lead for good in a 52-46 win, marking the first time a team was held under 50 points in the tournament final. "We just grinded it out and won," McDonald said. "It was just a testament to guys playing together as a team, believing in each other, and not caring who scored, not caring who got credit." By the time 13th seeded Canisius arrived in Dallas to face number 4 Utah in the NCAA tournament, Beeline didn't need another pep talk. In fact, Beeline was so optimistic Canisius could win that he convinced friends Mike Ennis, owner of Danny Sheehan's Steakhouse in Lockport, and John Murphy, then working for WKBW, to think likewise. "It was the worst game I've ever watched," Enos said. "They were never in it." Although Canisius didn't have Barley, Utah star Keith Van Horn, who would be the number 2 pick in the NBA draft the next year, wasn't going to play due to an illness. Beeline thought they would cancel each other. Utah won 72-43. The Utes not only had future NBA players Andre Miller and Michael Doliak, who would lead them to the national final 2 years later, but they had a superb coach in Rick Majerus, and Majerus knew something Beeline didn't. Beeline didn't know other coaches could watch practices during the NCAA tournament. Utah saw Barley wasn't going to play, or wouldn't be effective if he did, so they double-teamed Meeks the whole game. "After that, I always had my staff go to the other team's shoot-arounds to see what they really looked like," Beeline said. "They're more for show than anything else, but that was a key part of the game." Canisius returned to the MAC final in 1997, only to be upset 78-72 by 8th-seeded Fairfield in a championship game rematch, ending a run of 3 consecutive postseason tournament appearances. Richmond hired Beeline after the season, and McDonald was promoted to head coach. Beeline took Richmond to the NCAA tournament in 1998, upsetting number 3 South Carolina in the first round. Enos started the famous bus trips during Beeline's time at Richmond, continuing at times during his stops at West Virginia and Michigan. The bus ride Beeline remembers is in 1996, as the team traversed a snowstorm on the way home from Albany. Beeline's wife, Kathleen, was concerned the bus was going to skid off the road. But with the MAC championship trophy tucked safely in the back and Canisius's first NCAA tournament berth in 40 years coming, a storm wasn't going to dampen the mood of their sense of relief. And a month later, Beeline went to the Final Four in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Banners of every team in the tournament were hung around Continental Airlines Arena, and Beeline made sure to take a picture of the Canisius banner. There was a dry run at Canisius, and there's a dry run afterwards, so it meant a lot to me, Beeline said. How many times can you go to the semifinal and not get to the championship game? It was a great relief, but a great amount of happiness, too. You are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Niagara Gazette on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. From Friday, March 20th of 2026. EPA warning signs. Agency wants clearer message on PCB-related fish limits at 18 Mile Creek. Article by Mark Shearer. Concerns over the consumption of fish from 18 Mile Creek has prompted a federal regulatory agency to call for upgrades to the existing system of health advisory warnings in the area. In a memorandum issued on Wednesday, the U.S. Office of Inspector General for the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency suggested the state should update what it described as inadequate risk communication at the 18 Mile Creek Superfund site in Newfane. The memorandum, issued following an inspection that the Inspector General said took place between last July and March, expressed concern that the public may be consuming more fish than the state recommends. The finding was based on 2 site visits, interviews with site staff, and analysis of historical photos. Without adequate signage, the EPA cannot rely on the institutional control intended to limit the public's exposure to PCBs, and the public may incorrectly believe that the fish in 18 Mile Creek are safe to consume in excess of the state's advisory. In a previously issued advisory, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation encouraged the public to consume rainbow trout, coho salmon, and Chinook salmon from 18 Mile Creek only once per month, and to stop consuming any other fish from the waterways altogether. The EPA specifically noted that an information sign located at the entrance to Fisherman's Park is faded and has visible cracks, making it difficult to read. The memorandum noted that the sign does not list or depict either the fish species included in the advisory or the consumption recommendations. Citing federal guidelines, the EPA's Inspector General indicated that such advisory should be clear, prescriptive, and explanatory, and should include meaningful visual images, particularly when describing portion sizes for consumption. The EPA placed the 18 Mile Creek corridor site, which extends from Lower Town Lockport to Lake Ontario at Olcott, on the national priorities list, and began investigating the site in 2012. The agency discovered that the site's sediments, soil, and surface water were contaminated with polychlorinated biphenyls, or PCBs. According to the Office of the Inspector General, the EPA relies on institutional controls, including New York State's Fish Consumption Advisory, as part of the remedy to limit the public's exposure to contaminants. Shining a light on New York. Transparency advocates push for reforms amid Sunshine Week. Article by Mark Shearer. When it comes to compliance and enforcement of open meetings and freedom of information laws, New York State still has a lot of work to do. That was a Sunshine Week conclusion of government transparency advocates who met with state lawmakers in Albany on Wednesday to press for the passage of reform bills they say will strengthen New York's open government laws. We have the laws on the books, we just don't enforce them. Why is the burden of enforcing transparency laws placed entirely on the residents of New York? Said Axel Eberman, director for the nonprofit, nonpartisan group, the New York Coalition for Open Government. This week is Sunshine Week, a period recognized by journalists, civic groups, educators, and lawmakers in an effort to highlight the importance of public records and open government. It is based at the Joseph L. Breachner Freedom of Information Project at the University of Florida's College of Journalism and Communication. Eberman and other coalition members contend that New York remains in a crisis where open government is concerned. To prove their point, they shared the findings from coalition research, which showed only 31% of state agencies provided FOIL data in their 2022 transparency plans. Most state agencies take more than the 20 days required by FOIL to provide requested records. 72% of towns do not post meeting documents online. 35% of villages did not even post a meeting agenda. 39% of counties failed to acknowledge FOIL requests within the required 5 business days. 73% of election boards failed to acknowledge requests within 5 business days. 28% of counties never acknowledged FOIL requests at all. Coalition members continue to advocate for the passage of 4 transparency bills, including a constitutional amendment covering the right to public information. Coalition members said the amendment would enshrine the right to access government records and attend public meetings in the New York State Constitution. 4 other states have already approved similar amendments. A measure that would make it easier for New Yorkers who prevail in FOIL cases to recover legal costs, bringing the state in line with standards in California and Florida. Mandatory open governmental training for local officials. The bill would require local clerks, records access officers, and FOIL appeal officers to complete at least 2 hours of annual training on the open meetings law and FOIL, and a requirement mandating hybrid meetings for all public bodies. The bill would make hybrid meetings rules permanent and mandatory, ensuring remote access for residents who cannot attend in person. Coalition members joined on Wednesday in Albany with 6 legislative sponsors of broader open government laws, as well as representatives from other good government groups, including Reinvent Albany, the NYCLU, Common Cause New York, and the Freedom of the Press Foundation. The coalition's push comes after a session in which several transparency bills gained significant legislative momentum. Last year, the bill to reduce agency FOIL response times passed both the Senate and the Assembly, only to be vetoed by Governor Kathy Hochul. Other FOIL reform bills passed one chamber, but stalled in the other. The coalition says these near misses show the legislature is ready to act and that the remaining obstacle is political will at the executive level. We come to Albany every year with our partners. We research problems, write bills, and work to pass them. Some of them actually move forwards thanks to our legislators, and then they often get vetoed by the governor. This is immensely frustrating, Eberman said. In music scene, Art Park's changing its tune. As summer lineup evolves, era of classic rock gives way to indie artists. Article by Tom Jennings. For nearly a quarter of a century, Art Park has hosted concerts at its outdoor amphitheater. It was a space on the property originally deemed too hot in the summer to host live shows, and before that section of the park became known for concerts, it was known as a spot where an art collective buried a station wagon that doubled as a time capsule. That station wagon was supposed to be unearthed in 2000, but instead, a major concert venue was born on the site. Over that same period, I have waited in anticipation for the historic venue's summer lineup. The lineup reveal used to be a major press event, and there were plenty of internet sleuths who tried to reveal spoilers. One person leaked a Paul Simon date that turned out to be false, sparking quite the kerfuffle. Although there will likely be more dates added, this year's lineup serves as a reminder that the period of classic rock boomer era boomer-era bands dominating the venue's schedule appears to be ending. This is a significant change for some people, especially given that classic rock-era bands, for our purposes, legacy acts from 1965 to 1990, dominated Art Park's lineup during the pre-COVID decades and typically accounted for at least 50% of the shows. In 2019, you had Sammy Hagar, Bad Company, and Night Ranger, and even the first year after the pandemic, Chicago and King Crimson were part of the lineup, with legacy classic rock-era bands representing around 35% of the lineup. In 2022, it dropped to around 25%. In 23 to 20%. In 2024 to 15%, and last year to around 10%. George Thorogood, 38 Special, and Todd Rundgren were the only three legacy acts. Currently in 2026, there are no classic rock arts scheduled. This likely reflects fewer such bands touring and their preference for more comfortable venues like casinos. For those of us at a certain age, it is a tough pill to swallow, but it was inevitable that Art Park needed to expand its audience and build a new one. They appear to be doing it by replacing classic rock-era legacy acts with indie acts. Both of Art Park's venues are perfect for indie acts, and as an arts organizer, it makes sense to bring in more eclectic choices. Fallsview Casino has fully embraced the classic rock genre and now constantly hosts the most classic rock legacy bands of any large venue in the area. They also aren't as concerned with the expansive guarantees of legacy bands, which makes those shows riskier. And while classic rock era bands build their audience through radio airplay, indie bands built a following through social media during the streaming era. Since music radio is no longer the primary means of discovery of new artists, it makes sense that bands that came of age in the streaming era will be taking over live music. Whether or not we have seen the last of the classic rock era at Art Park, it was a historic run that served both the bands and the venue well, and you can still trust Art Park to bring in great acts regardless of the genre. You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from current issues of the Niagara Gazette. We read from the Niagara Gazette every Saturday at 11 a.m. Your reader has been Bruce. Thank you for listening, and as always, make it a great day.
Coming up next in the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, we have a reading of the Dunkirk Observer. Following that at 1 o'clock, we have a reading of some of our Northtown Bee papers, including Amherst, Clarence, Cheektowaga, Lancaster, and Depew. And then at 2 o'clock, we have the Southtown Bees, which includes Orchard Park, the Hamburg Sun, the East Aurora, and West Seneca papers. Stay with us for these readings and more. You're listening to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. Radio Reading broadcasts daily readings 24 hours a day of newspapers, magazines, and books to people who are blind or have a print disability and are provided reading radios. Radio Reading's broadcast signal is provided at no charge by WNED. From broadcast studios at 1199 Harlem Road, Radio Reading continues our almost 40-year tradition of award-winning service. For more information on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service, call 716-821-5555. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability